Give everybody a few minutes. I'm starting a little before 1 o'clock for people to join, but this way, in case people show up, I am already streaming. So I started the link a little bit early today, and it's in my ring light. You can see it up there. You can see another light over there. And I'm going to be shooting a video a little bit later today to go over the same topic, but in a very condensed format to discuss the idea of how to survive these medieval times. So this is the longer form explanation of what I've been going over in my classes. And then later I'm actually going to be using my bulky camera on my bulky tripod to do more formal work, which I'll be sharing either next week, probably next week. It's going to be a shorter form video to go in depth on and talk about some content that I've seen that I really think really requires some extra in-depth look into what is some of the most beautiful things that are coming out of the internet right now, and most importantly, why they're appearing. So that's what I'll be doing very soon. Okay, so and to begin with the story, I am Jamie Cohen. I am a digital culture expert, as the SEO says. And today's office hours are coming at the end of the semester in my real world job, which is being a professor. And want to share with you some of the things I've been talking to my students about in the times of this. A lot of things going on. So I'm going to do a little bit of coverage here, but basically my main premise of today's talk is how to survive these medieval times. I don't mean medieval times because we've had enough of that, but the midness of it all, like what to do with all of that, knowing that my students are about to graduate in many cases, but also many of them are about to go off to summer and probably are like looking for things to like find a way to place their creativity. So I'll be going over that today too. So as always, for anybody who's here, if you have any comments, questions, or want to talk about something, or add something you want to add to the conversation, that's of course what you can do in the comment section. I do have safe mode on, which just disallows brigading, but I'm pretty sure a 5-second delay isn't going to harm anybody. But that is something that I want to make offer to you. And when I see more people appear, I'll make sure that we talk, see if I can introduce you to each other. Small note for the future, since this video is also archived as well as being live, I'm launching a Discord, a Be Curious and Persist Discord channel server, which will allow us to basically communicate offline and share links and share these ideas. And it will also allow me to keep the conversation going off of Thursdays alone. It could just be something that is wrapped around to the weeks. So it could be, keep on going. So the Discord channel link will be up probably next week in next week's office hours. But in this week, I want to just be pretty succinct on this. So let's frame it up. Okay, so I've got about 1 week left in the semester. And as we get to the end of the semester, I have to kind of lighten the load for my students. And what I mean by that is that everything's kind of heavy right now. Things aren't as enjoyable as they should be. And I really want to make sure that my students don't feel like everything is grim all the time. For anybody who's taken a class with me, they kind of know that I could kind of get somewhat dark into my topics because it is, I try to be very honest. I have a quote on my wall over here from Kurt Vonnegut, and the quote says, the heartbreaking necessity, let me read this right. The heartbreaking necessity about lying, the heartbreaking necessity of lying about reality, and the heartbreaking impossibility of lying about it. So what that basically means is like there is no way for me to be not honest with my students. I have to be honest with them, no matter how heartbreaking it is. And I think that's important because it's a disservice if I don't give them the actual truth of what's going out in these worlds. Because if they enter a world in which they basically were given the gleaming reality of college as their experience, that's pretty unrealistic to what life is like anywhere else. And so one of the topics that have come up this semester, obviously on top of everything else, are really wrapped around like three big things that we're focused on. One mega surveillance, like the ultra surveillance apparatus that's really wrapping around everything that we know. Two, the whole averageness of it all, like the idea that AI is basically converting everything into an average. And on top of that, AI psychosis, the time when people fall down these, I don't want to call them rabbit holes, but times in which people get basically become reliant on AI to the point where they're unable to use their brains in some other way. So yeah, and it's as Josh just said, it's not just average, it's awful. And that is a personal opinion, but I don't think it's just mine and Josh's. I do think that the averageness of AI outputs and generative AI outputs are this is this is like something that like really bothers me because I come from a creative background, but it's also like what it and like he says, what it matters, why it matters is because in my world, at least, I try to pride myself on being creative, and I also pride myself on recognizing creativity in others. I also don't accept average content. My students like really know, like one of the most important things in my classes is that they have to be creative. And it is that's I like your prefix and everything, Josh. AI average and AIologisms. I guess it would be pronounced AI if there's a way of saying AI as a word. Which it shouldn't be a word at all. And like, let's just get clear on something really quickly. AI that I'm talking about, artificial intelligence that I'm speaking about directly right now. I'm not speaking about the AI that we use on a pretty consistent basis. I'm not talking about the AI that we use to help us use GPS or the AI that helps us do predictive text, although that is pretty similar to what this is. The AI I'm speaking about is generative AI. And generative AI is the AI that basically is built on LLMs, large language models, using massive data sets that are scraped from a massive extant amount of data on the internet, leaving fair amount of black holes and biases in the data set itself by what isn't scraped into the data set. And what that means is basically AI, generative AI, LLMs are built upon an incomplete data set. That means that people who weren't or didn't have the privilege to have access to any type of internet or leaving artifacts online traditionally or historically aren't in the data set, which means when you ask AI to generate any type of content, you are generating incomplete data. It means that you're leaving out voices from marginalized groups. You're leaving out, in particular, trans voices, Black voices, Indigenous voices. Like basically, anybody who just didn't have the internet for the last 30 years, the idea of them being part of the data set is negated. It's also AI's writers, the people who code AI and write the LLMs, the large language models, um, are typically privileged and really are significantly male and significantly white. It's not a generalization. It's just that's the statistical output of it. The majority in that case. And what that often means is that we miss out on feminist critiques of it, or we miss out on any perspectives that might represent a diverse population. That so then what happens is like you generate a word that I use on every single time I do this, which is like generate an image of a family eating spaghetti, and it will always generate a white family eating spaghetti. And then I ask it to generate family eating tacos, and it generates a white family eating tacos, and so on and so forth for every type of like stereotypical food. And then you could ask generative AI a similar question, say like, why are they always white? And AI will always answer the same way. What a great question. So glad you asked that. Here's why this matters, as Josh would say at the AI logisms. And it will say that's because there's bias in the system. So that means when I ask my students to do work and they're using generative AI, I'm a little disappointed because I am already aware not only of its grammar and its cadence, that's the way I put it. You can tell its beat depending on its system. I could tell what a Claude output is versus an OpenAI output. Um, but you could also tell that the output itself is going to have gaps in its ability to create content. So it is a bit of a problem when I'm talking about content like that. So that's very mid, okay? Average, mid is a Gen Z term for basically average, okay? That's what mid is. And the reason why I use the term evil on top of mid-evil is because we're in the age of what all this is that you also have to keep in mind that a lot of these companies are engaging with AI for that exact purpose. The idea is to create the average. The idea is to create mid. It is to create a reliance on AI which creates such dependency that you are unable to think further about certain things. Kat Tenberge actually mentions this at the end of the episode, which I'll link down below, with Taylor Lorenz when they talk about what's the real story about the social media addiction trial. And at the end of it, she notes two important points. One of the goals of social media bans is that you basically don't have access to extant information, which is just people, humans, the social in social media, the people that are connect us to others online, until you're 18, which makes you very ripe for manipulation. Makes you ability to think critically about things is diminished. And second, the idea of AI creating a very mid outcome of everything is going to be um, lowers our critical thinking skills. And so those two things together make things very mid, you know? And so I just want to point out a few things. So first I'm going to show you the mid, and then I'm going to talk about how to survive the medieval times. Okay. So two parts to this. So first, let's talk about what makes things mid. Okay. So let's start with, since we're talking about AI, let's talk about AI. Okay. Um, this is a nice little article from Fast Company that really describes it in a pretty good way. And so let's talk what that means. Oh, here we go. Sorry. It's funny too. I'm strapped in via Ethernet. So it's kind of funny that it's having issues sharing my tabs, but that's it. That's the thing that happens. I'm guessing you could all hear me and see me still, I'm hoping. I think. Anyway, AI is replacing creativity with average. And this article basically speaks to um, and the way that AI actually does things. And so here's the article part that I really wanted to focus on: the subtle drift towards sameness. The real risk with AI is not that it replaces creativity. Okay, cool. Yeah, he froze. Yeah, it froze for about 15 seconds because it is weird. Like I said, I am plugged in. So it's definitely about the fact that my computer has not been turned off in weeks. All right. So I apologize for that. Um, the subtle drift towards sameness. The real risk with AI is not that it's that it compresses it into predictable forms. Let me stop sharing. So at least I have to explain this. There we go. The real risk with AI is not that it replaces creativity, it's that it compresses it into predictable forms. You could already see it happening. Writing across platforms is beginning to sound more uniform, technically polished, structurally clean, and increasingly interchangeable. Brand voices are converging. Strategic thinking is starting to mirror the same frameworks and language patterns. Here's where our author writes: an analysis in science advances found that AI assisted outputs often improve clarity and correctness, but reduce linguistic diversity and stylistic variation. The output improves, but the texture fades. And the texture is where meaning lives. And that's exactly what I'm talking about, which is that sure, the technology works. Sure, the technology does the thing. Sure, the technology is really, really great. But when we're talking about averaging everything else, we're losing the ability to have diversity. And thank you, Josh, for that reminder. First off, anybody, welcome to the stream. If you're showing up, thank you for joining office hours. If you want to introduce yourself in the chat to each other, that'd be cool too, or how you even found this, because I posted this on every platform except LinkedIn. I should have, but LinkedIn doesn't have like a short form post, and it's kind of annoying to post something and then immediately delete it. I should have posted on it, but whatever. Usually my Instagram is my main outlet for this. So if anybody's here, welcome aboard and welcome to it. And thank you for being here. So we're talking about how to survive these medieval times. In the history of progress, one thing that, yeah, I know I should have posted it on LinkedIn, but it's like then making a LinkedIn post is I get so mad at creating LinkedIn posts that I have to delete like right after. And like, it doesn't bring, I appreciate the feedback on that one. It just doesn't, Did nothing last time, like 0. So I'll try it again next week. I'll try to do a more longer form LinkedIn post. It's now in my bio. Everybody knows to visit newanddigital.com, which is a hyperlink that automatically redirects to this exact stream, um, which is, I think, pretty cool. It's a hard link, and I wrote it. It's pretty nice. Anyway, the I was reading this. I did this lecture earlier this week with my grad students, and we were talking about time. We talked about deep time, which is one of my favorite things. And Destiny and Josh both know about this. Destiny was on Destiny, who's my co-host of the show Network Issues, by the way, which you should be watching on this channel. The We went on a study abroad multiple times to talk about deep time, both in Rome and the Boyne Valley in Ireland. And deep time is the idea of geological time as it matches with your human experiences. Does that mean? In other words, we exist on this planet for about 1/10 of one millennia, but we're really inheriting all the parts of the past as we exist in those lifetimes. And so I did this amazing little walk downtown just to show what New York City's history is, because there are certain parts of Lower Manhattan in the financial district where you can look down through glass at the original New York City. There's New York City is underneath there, and there's glass windows that show you like a building that's built in like the 1630s, which is very cool to look at. And one of the things I talked about was that we often use the term progress as we talk about what it means to go into the future. And Shannon Mattern, who wrote the book, or wrote a book about mapping cities, and then I also use Siegfried Zelensky's book about deep time. Deep time in the media. Sorry, I was looking back at the book. Siegfried Zelensky's book, Deep Time in the Media, talks about the idea that the term progress is actually a definition of the reduction of diversity. That's really what progress is. And what he means by the reduction of diversity is actually very similar to what Benedict Anderson talks about in Imagined Communities. Diversity is like every human carries their own sort of dialect or information, unique ability to experience the world. And in pre-textual times or pre-newspaper times, we would speak in all these different ways and kind of have agreed upon community understanding of the way we spoke about things. When we created print, when print became a standardization, we reduced diversity of language because just it's not possible to print everything in everybody's own dialect. So you have only the amount of money to set print. And this is, remember, the 1450s when we did movable type. There's just not enough time to basically create print in every different dialect or different variation of that language comes in. So they would just assimilate it, turn it into one language. So instead of typing out Neapolitan or Sicilian or all the different dialects of Italy, they would just write in Italian. So then it became like basically reduced all these down to one language, which gave Italy a nationalism, for one thing. It would give France nationalism when it's written in French. It gives the United States nationalism because as an amalgamation of languages, we still have just English as a dominant language. And national languages typically aren't a thing, but it does, knowing that we have the nationalism of paper, of actual newsprint, it does create a nationalism of pride around the specific language. So in that time, like what it does is reduction of diversity. So we basically have already lost, in the 500 last years, we've already lost a fair amount of diversity of texture, of language, of meaning. And then now we have in 2020s, mid 2020s, we now have AI, which reduces it even further because it's being trained on incomplete data sets of non-diversity. Whereas newsprint may have encouraged diversity based on the local population, the internet is not built like that. The internet is built as a cumulative experiment based on usage. And so it really does cause a problem, which makes everything mid, just very mid. Part two, okay? The other thing is what happens with AI psychosis. What ends up happening is that people become very reliant on AI. People become so reliant that sometimes they can no longer see outside of their AI usage. In other words, everything must be interpreted through their AI systems, whether that be Claude or OpenAI. There are people I know, unfortunately, I now know 3, that have basically stopped being functional as people, and now they are functional as the human organic output of an AI system. And what I mean by that is that when they get an email, when they get a text, when they get anything, their AI agent or their AI themselves actually ingests that text to formulate a response. And when you're speaking to them, you're actually speaking to the bot. You're actually speaking through the robot as a human interface of a robot. And that makes me very sad, to be honest. 404 Media actually put together this great article. I'm going to try to do this share again and hope it doesn't crash my computer. If it does, I'll see you guys in a couple of millennia. Let's see if it worked. Let's see if it allows me to do without destabilizing my platform. Kind of did. Okay. How to talk to someone experiencing AI psychosis. This really phenomenal article about this. How to approach them. Now, the reason why this is a really important article to read and understand is that it's really like any, I'm going to cut this out just so you've already seen it. Just as anybody who falls down any significant rabbit hole or falls into any space of conspiratorial thinking, you have to be very delicate of how you speak to them. And the reason you have to be delicate is because oftentimes conspiratorial thinking, or in this case, AI psychosis, becomes a form of shame. You don't want to shame somebody or make them feel inadequate for their beliefs or their connections to things. So you have to be fairly careful. Anybody who falls into the rabbit hole or conspiracies, be real about it, but don't be like, oh, you're doing something wrong or you should be ashamed of yourself. It's hard because one of the things that makes AI psychosis so compelling is that it is so accessible. It's so easy to use and it speaks to you like a human being. It speaks to you as if you're speaking to a person. And again, without having an understanding of texture and contour and the beauty of how human communication works, the machine is answering you the way you'd want it to. Okay. So again, quick note, anybody joining, thank you for being here. If you want to introduce yourselves in the chat, I'd love to hear it. If you have any ideas or comments on this, I'd love to hear your thoughts on anything I'm talking about. As I said earlier, I'm speaking about how to survive these medieval times. And I'm talking about AI psychosis at this point. AI psychosis is a pretty damning term because it really does mean that like you're gone, you're over the limit. But that's not exactly true. It just means that somebody's fallen into a place where they feel like the reliance is there. Chatbots are very easy to speak to. And if you use the voice to text version of them, it does sound like a person is speaking to you. But the one thing that we've learned is that chatbots are just doing their best to repeat you. Their sycophantism is built into AI. Sycophancy is a expression of code that is an extension of previous codes of frictionless architectures and of the term time spent. And time spent is built into most social media. And that means that the social media platforms profit the most the more time you spend on them. You're basically seeing more ads the longer you're there. In the case of AI, the reason why time spent matters a lot is because the reason you're speaking to AI is because you're training the model. You're adding your parts into it. You're helping train future users. So the more you speak to an AI, the more you're actually training it. It's using your specific data. And this is office hours, so I'm going to go into a little bit of depth here. But like, do you guys remember using CAPTCHA? Like, when you were using CAPTCHA, at first the CAPTCHAs were like super simple. Like they would be like, say these letters, and they like ridiculous letters, and you're just like, sure, C, capital A, T, L, whatever. It doesn't even matter what they were. And you were like, whatever, as long as I get into the website, I don't care what the CAPTCHA says. You were actually training LLMs to read ancient manuscripts, is what you were doing. When you look at a book or any text of anything, I'll just pull a book from the bookshelf here. When you are reading a book or trying to scan a book, there's always a problem with this part of the scan right here, the curve. Okay, so when you put this down on a scanner, it actually has a problem with the bend in the text. And because we weren't there when people were scanning it, scans were probably done, not as carefully as archivists would have done it. They were just like throwing it on the board, hitting scan. It could have been done by like research assistants or interns or who knows, it doesn't matter. But you're putting it down on here. And ancient manuscripts are obviously pretty fragile. So when you put it on there, it was like they didn't even think about it. So what they did is they needed AI to start reading it. They needed AI to actually read how it worked. And the way they did that, it was have users start training AI models to train it to read the bend, to curve. Then, when that was trained, they moved on to the better training, which is like that capture with like cubes, and it was like name all the pictures with bicycles. And you're like, well, I don't care. Why do I need to train things on bicycles? Um, Oh, there was a step before that. They were training Google Maps. So you were actually asked to train it to name house numbers. So they would have these teeny little house numbers and you have to type them in. And you were training robots to basically see house numbers. So for AI, for delivery, so to speak. The bicycles, the street, the sidewalks, and all that, you were training self driving cars. And so each of these training models are basically you training robots. And there's obviously the reason why AI is free is because you're training the model. They are usurping you. They are taking you from it and making you the process that makes the AI work better. And like, I get it because it's like cost savings. You get a million people using it at the same time. You're going to train a model faster than if none. But it also creates the sycophancy that people without critical thinking skills miss the idea that they are not communicating with a human. They're communicating solely with a robot that's basically extracting them, taking it right from them. Okay, so that makes me nervous. Now, one more part of the mid. Okay, so one more mid part, and I apologize that there's so much mid. Um, this is the last part. So this is something that is fascinating to me. This is I can't believe my internet's doing this, considering like I literally am plugged into the Ethernet. This is interesting. Ready? So, yes, it is a vampire. Let's see. I'm not going to show this the whole time. This is, man, screen share today is not doing well for me. It is beating the hell out of my computer. What is Ozempic personality, and why does it make life feel meh? So I'm just going to use the term meh as like mid in this case. This is a very interesting case that's come up. So Washington Post writes about this. This is an outcome of extreme use or further use of GLP-1s. And what happened is that people, when they got their expected outcomes. Now, I'm not anti GLP-1. I think if you need it, you could use it, and you should if it's for your health or for diabetes, whatever it's for. I mean, it's an accessible thing, but there is a certain point when people start feeling that the loss, after they've completed the idea of no longer having the desire for food, they start having no desire whatsoever. And so in a weird side effect of GLP-1s, it's basically creating the feeling of meh, like, no, the idea of care gets reduced almost down to nothing. And that is another part of mid. And like, I'm not calling GLP-1s evil, but it is in combination with the AI psychosis, AI use, AI averaging of everything. When we get this outcome at the exact same time, while we're still living through the Steve Bannon flood the zone with shit era of news, everything is medieval. Everything is the average evil. It is not. It's not that I want exciting evil. I want no evil. Okay, let's be clear about that. But the idea of medieval is like just so absolutely apparent right now, and it just becomes something that like is really starting to worry me in terms of like a reliance on like all of these mid technologies. Like I like a long-term discussion of like net neutrality, and the idea of technology is who has access to create new media, who has access to create technology that can compete with something like Facebook. We're kind of really lucky that we have Blue Sky, and maybe even, I don't know, I haven't used Mastodon like since it launched, but like we have the opportunity to have like insurgent social media that appears. But we also have like Threads, which is like the corporate version of Twitter that's pooped out of Instagram, you know? So it's like there are like it's not, I just don't think we have like enough opportunity to have all these spaces. They do exist, but I really wish they would grow. There's also Upscrolled that exists that's pretty upstart, which is nice. Um but it does mean that like we have to use the technologies that exist, and like I would love to see more that appear. Now, whenever something new appears, one of those things does appear that worries me, that makes it very apparent that we're in a point of time where we're lacking that type of control, is this article that I was quoted in from Taylor Lorenz over the weekend. Was it over the weekend? I think it was over the weekend. about AI dark money and influencers. So again, man, should have restarted my computer. This is on me, guys. Okay, share. Bloop. Now, this article has gone fairly viral, which is kind of good. This article has gone out there, and people are starting to see this article that aren't in the circle or the algorithmic loop that typically covers this type of thing. This is an article by Taylor Lorenz in Wired magazine. It's called "A Dark Money Campaign is Paying Influencers to Frame Chinese AI as a Threat." This article I am quoted in twice towards the end, but it is a story that is pretty shocking about AI media. Um, Taylor uncovered by accident a story about how influencers are being paid through dark money to basically explain that AI, to be very pro AI, extremely pro AI, by framing it around the idea about being anti China. And it frames it around the idea of the consistent, repeatable argument that if we don't beat China to the AI race, we're going to lose and never recover. To be clear, there is a race. Okay, there is an AI race that's going on that's global. Whoever reaches AGI first will dominate. To be clear, generative AI will never reach it. Okay, whatever iteration you are currently using of AI is not AGI. Okay, generative AI is not the same thing. Okay, it will be developed separately. What you're using right now is possibly and potentially training an AGI model, but this is not it. AGI standing for artificial general intelligence, which is basically human-esque behaviors built into an LLM. That is not in generative AI at all. Okay, I need to be very clear about that because many people think that what they're using right now is a human. I'll tell a short story about what's his face. What's his name? Who could use something called Claudia Dawkins? Oh my goodness! I'll get to that in a second. And I'm sure on the replay that we'll see how that plays out. So Taylor Lorenz was offered money to basically do some pro AI speaking. She is technically an influencer slash journalist, and so she found this input and basically found out that a lot of people were getting offered this same thing, and so many regular influencers started speaking about being pro AI, even though that wasn't typically their beat. That wasn't typically their angle when they talk. And it's because they were accepting the dark money. Now, when we talk about dark money is money that doesn't have a way of finding out who's paying. Okay, that's basically what dark money is. And in this case, it is basically going around the FTC to make sure you can spread those messages. The Federal Trade Commission in the United States basically regulates advertising online. Now, I don't know how it's doing currently under this administration. I honestly don't. I haven't researched it enough. My only assumption is not great. The FCC regulates broadcast spectrum, so anything on the wireless spectrum is covered by the FCC. And then FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, regulates how we do ads and everything. And so one of the things that has come from this is that if you want to pay an influencer to basically broadcast or say something, if you pay them directly, they have to put hashtag ad or partner. They basically have to disclose that they're being paid to sell an idea or say an idea. An influencer is virtually a person. Okay, that is it's a person that is basically a salesperson, but they influence somebody else's purchasing. In terms of brand sponsorship or sponsored content, they're basically reinforcing brand identity. That's their job, or creating or debuting something. Oh my gosh, this Josh makes a joke. This segment sponsored by Kalshi. If you want to play with time, if I was influential enough, I could give you insight as to something I may do in the future, and you can make a Kalshi bet on that and then cash out, which would be very interesting. But I'm not that influential. I'm just not that's not my thing. But so now here's how to go around the FTC. So if you don't want to have to disclose that information, a organization can pay a super PAC, which is a political action campaign. So it's like you basically have political campaigns that could support politicians, can support movements, can support so many other things. But it changes the rules on how the Federal Trade Commission basically regulates that. And so a super PAC can then pay a influencer to promote um, political messaging, and then the FTC doesn't have to think about that any longer. And so that type of like information is how dark money campaigns are happening. Now, to frame it around anti-China is how it becomes political rather than pro. So rather than pro AI, it becomes anti-China. Those are two exact same things, but in this case, I'm quoted twice in this article. I'm very proud of that. My first quote says, what did it say? It's a long article. She wrote this pretty quickly. That was one of my quotes. One of my quotes is, consumers, this is a true quote, consumers don't know when the information they're receiving is paid for, which is true. Consumers literally do not. Even if there's a hashtag ad or partnership, many times we don't think about it. Years ago, we interviewed somebody on our live streamed salons, Josh and I. And they mentioned that like even Twitter ads, like many ads on internet, you don't see until you hit the bottom. So if you're not scrolling properly, you can't even see the ads. So the most consumers just don't know it at all. And so I wrote, these influencers are accepting undisclosed money from AI industry. They're promoting the messages of specific companies, like OpenAI, and the public has no idea. And the way I put it is, this is corrosive to democracy. And the reason it's corrosive to democracy, just to be clear, just in case anybody has a question about that, is because we live in a capitalist system. And so capitalism and democracy in the United States are intertwined. And therefore, when you are blind to one part of your consumerism, technically as a consumer, you are not politically engaged enough to understand how democracy is operating, especially when a super PAC, a political organization, is paying influencers and there is no way to disclose that money. This is a small example of what becomes corrosive in terms of like long-term problems with democracy. And so I end this, one of my bites almost ends this one, but it basically says, I point out that attempting to warp the information ecosystem by spreading undisclosed political messaging is not in line with upholding democratic ideals. A partnership label or hashtag ad is not enough to explain the agenda behind the information of what the influencer is presenting. And I say, this is literally propaganda, which is literally what it is. So it's propaganda by AI companies filtered through influencers, which are parasocial relationships to consumer choices. And that is very corrosive to our democracy. And I really do think that's important for us to know. And I think it's really important to go more in depth. Desi and I are going to talk about network issues on one of our next episodes. So we can go in far more in depth with this topic, because I do think it's really important to share this with your friends and to remind them that not everything they see online is as clear cut as it should be. And especially when something seems like it's being pro something or anti something else, those are messages that may not be organic from an influencer. Those might be pushed through from an organization. And I think if we don't know that, well, then how do we know anything? So we have to get our grips on this. Okay. So how do you survive? How do you survive this? How do you survive these medieval times? Like, how do you do it? And one of the things I want to point out is that underneath all of this is still human experience, beauty, and amazing things that are coming from this. Josh shared with me a statistic, a chart a few weeks ago about, let me see if I can find the Gen Z AI thoughts. Here it is. I found it. Cool. The the answer, of course, is delete all social media and go live in the woods is one choice that Destiny mentions. That is one, but I don't know if there's enough woods. So it could be a good experiment. That's what I live in the woods, but I have my job is to read social media. So I would love to find another job where it's just the woods. So a few weeks ago, Josh shared with me a survey, which was fascinating, about how Gen Z's thoughts on AI, or just Gen Z's thoughts, like an overall survey on it, and they rank their dislike of AI. They actually dislike AI more. I think it was disliked it more than they disliked President Trump. And then I think the only thing they disliked more than AI was like the Democrats, which I thought was funny because are there Democrats? Or is there an opposition party? I don't even know if that exists. So there's no surprise in that. But this article appears that I really did like, and of course, this gave me hope. Okay, so this is where hope comes in, and see if hope allows me to share this on a screen without my computer in the dumps. Let's say, okay, bink. All right, cool. The more young people use AI, the more they hate it. Um, Caught between fears of job loss and social stigma, Gen Z's opinions of AI are hitting new lows. And this article kind of goes in depth of the output of that survey. Now, I'm going to cut out on this just because I want to save my bandwidth. But basically, it is a discussion about how Gen Z at first was these great quick adopters of generative AI, really quick, and it was and for very obvious reasons. Okay, again, I'm going to respond again to this idea of why generative AI still has positive aspects. It can help you think through a problem. It can help you do some grunt work. It can help you reorganize things that you might have out there. But the generative part of it is what I have problems with. Okay, the part where it's creating slop or creating content that is average. That's the problem I have. Okay. Now, the reason why Gen Z seems to be extremely upset about AI is that the job market has tanked thanks to this. I was speaking last week to somebody who works in this industry. I'm not going to say the business or what they do, but they work in an industry where they have to basically sell seats. They have to get people to adopt these technologies, whether they're Claude, OpenAI, or any of these generative AI uh, parts, like adjacent parts of the generative AI business. They have to get them to adopt them. And so, like when people download like Copilot, you don't just buy like one seat; you buy like 5,000 of them. Now, the problem with buying 5,000 seats is that you have to have people use the technology. Otherwise, it seems like the company is losing money. Um, of course, when those money is spent on all those seats, those jobs are no longer necessary because let's just say 5 human positions that are doing menial task work can be replaced by one AI agent. And an agentic version of AI is when you compile a fair amount of your LLMs into something that's a bit autonomous, that could act on its own within the constraints of your corporation or your job or whatever the constraints you've given it. And when it runs autonomously, basically you could have a human no longer do the job, but also they could work around the clock while also, making water completely undrinkable unless you live in the woods by a stream. Like there's a cost to having agentic web basically operating too. In fact, there's a little quote I saw, I think it was on Threads or maybe it was on Blue Sky where maybe it was on X, I don't even remember, but people are walking around with their laptops kind of like ajar as they walk. And that's because they want their agent to keep operating, you know? So like no matter how much my MacBook Air is cooking, just doing this stream, I couldn't imagine it running an agent at all times. But you can imagine a Gen Zer, A, doesn't have the skill set to develop an agent, so they're reliant on the technologies. And two, they're going into a job market that's basically shallowed out by AI. And on top of that, they are starting to recognize that the midness of AI slop is starting to get sloppy. It's starting to get dull. It's not sort of with anything inside the Gartner hype cycle. We've already passed the hype peak. So now we're down here, which is like where it's about to be adopted, and whatever gets adopted is where it basically levels out. I try to stay away from the idea of something known as the AI crash or the AI bubble pop because I do think that this is now embedded in our worlds as much as I hate that. But it's sort of there, so you kind of have to understand that like after the hype cycle's over, now we're just looking at let's call it unique experiments in AI development. All right, which means garbage. All right, they're going to start making garbage tools that are going to try to get more adoption. So the thing is with AI and like a lot of these things is that very often AI emerges as like a try it, just try it, guys, go ahead. And here's what it says. Okay, so here's a quote from one of the students. Universities are hearing from employers that they want students who know how to use these tools, Hannah told The Verge. This is not because the tools actually have shown much value add. They want Gen Z to show them where the value add is. They want that is the excuse me, that or the university is investing or has donors heavily involved in the supply side, the tech industry, the people who pay the bills. In other words, AI companies and universities are taking an integrate first, find use cases later approach that essentially recruits students as marketing for the AI industry while baking these tools deep into the core of academia. Not my class. Um, and this one goes from ASU. Last month, the editorial board of the University of Pennsylvania student newspaper published a scathing piece criticizing the university administration's adoption of chatbot tools and its integration of AI topics into nearly every part of its curriculum. AI cannot coexist without education; it can only degrade it. Okay, so that's pretty interesting to me in terms of like how those things work. And then what I worry about then is like it's reliance. But the upside here is that Gen Z, the young people, the people who are in school, my students, the people who I interact with, like feel the same way as I do. I find that super hopeful. Like I know I'm at the tail end of another, I'm at the beginning of another whole generation from them, and they're at the mid area of their generation. And it's like not mid, like average, like they're the middle of it. It is nice. It's like actually refreshing to hear their perspectives on this and actually hear their pain against this. So I do appreciate that. The other thing that I really, really love, and there's now knowing my bandwidth, there is little chance of me showing you this video without this machine just straight up exploding. Um, is um, is this video that I'm going to be talking about in a short video for Instagram and verticals of the video that has come out. I'm going to bring it up here. That is from what's it called? Young Lean. Okay, Young Lean's video known as Storm. Okay, this video has like gone super viral. It's made by Generation. It is done by let's see if I could read who made this video. It is directed by French music video artist Romain Gavras and choreographed by Belgian-born Damien Gillet. The second half of the film, it is the music video that's gone viral. So it is a short film. It's an 8-minute short film, and I highly recommend you watch this music video. I'm going to see what I can do here without the computer exploding. So let's see if I can bring it. The point that I truly enjoy, which is the music video itself. We'll do our best here. Get ready for a full-on breakdown. Ready? This is to me is beautiful. Okay, so we'll see if this plays or does anything. Okay, we're not gonna. I'm just gonna clip through a few clips of this just so you can kind of see it. But this is incredible. Like an empty. Okay, it's not gonna work, but these guys. I'm going to my favorite part where the guys are swinging around. Where's the guy swinging around? Here we go. I'll show you the video, but you should see it. You have to see it. It's not a joke. This is not me like just completely like being fanboy about this. This video is actually incredible. This is an incredible video. It's just an incredible piece of content. And so the link is not even important. You have to see this video. It's Young Lean basically rapping in the center of this. The music is fantastic. And there are about, I guess about 30 or so men who basically did this incredible choreographed dance. I have truly seen this video probably anywhere between 20 and 20,000 times at this point. I don't even know. It says it has 6,736,000 views. I'm probably 736,000 views. I have no idea anymore. There's a reason you like this video. There's a reason why this video works beyond the idea of its beauty, its choreography, and all of this. It has to do with two parts that I'm going to try to express in a short clip. We'll do our best. One is that in the age of AI and the manosphere, this is a big fuck you to that. This is all dancing. This is all people. This is all boys being boys who can dance artistically. This is a really beautiful way of just seeing art in a different way. Aside from its extreme European whiteness that's in it, it's a really great way of experiencing artwork and dance. If you watch the behind the scenes and watch the video multiple times, you'll notice that every guy in the video is dancing uniquely. They're dancing their own specific movements. So they don't hit each other for one part, but they also make sure that the movements are choreographed to be artistic around that. The other part of this is that there is a history to this, which again, I'm doing a small promotion here for a video clip that hasn't been made yet, which is that this is in 2026. This is the end of a 20-year evolution of internet artwork and aesthetics. Um, this has to do with treadmills. All right. This has to do with the fact that OK Go 21 years ago built a music video of them dancing on treadmills with a single camera wide shot. And as OK Go's music videos developed, the aesthetic of the web continued. Single camera, move the camera, but do not cut. Let the choreography speak for itself. And as Destiny said, this is coordinated chaos. And that's a great way to describe it. Single take production. OK Go, Damien Kulash, the lead singer of OK Go, has a benefit. His sister, Trish C, is a very famous choreographer. And so they are able to add this choreography into a lot of their music videos. But it's also enabled OK Go to make sponsored content and survive as an independent band. They are on their own label, Paracadoo. And the idea that they can make choreography and artwork, a one camera artwork, shows that years later in 2026 is you could see this aesthetic continues at its peak form. This is a peak form of that because its intensity is way higher. But it is something that we as people enjoy and love. And it's like, as much as I want to shit on the mid-millennial, like flash mob aesthetic of one camera and everybody doing the same thing, that's on the same trend as this flash mob style of dance. This is a short film with a music video attached to its end, but it is human. It's beautifully human. It's beautifully non-mid. It is beautifully exceptional. And if we're going to survive our medieval times, we have to watch the exceptional. We have to enjoy the exceptional. We have to make the exceptional. It has to be beyond the ideas of something that you type a prompt in and it generates this. A prompt cannot. So this is, yeah, okay, good. It's a good point. Destiny makes a point that this is a much bigger budget than OK Go started with. OK Go's original video, I think it was 1,000,000 Ways. The first time they did a choreograph video, the budget for that video was $15. So the budgets have actually gone way higher than that in the 2020s. I mean, later, OK Go is like they rented the plane that did anti-gravity. So they eventually had the money to do much bigger projects, things with the glam cam and so forth. And again, I'll go more in depth with this on a larger project, but it is not just about the money. It is about the idea of coordination. It's about the idea that you and a bunch of your friends can practice a dance nonstop. And it's very simple if you just have, your camera sitting on a tripod and watching you. And yeah, sure, it feels somewhat like a flash mob, but it is definitely and distinctly not AI. And it makes us feel good that the fact that these young men doing this incredible dance can be enjoyed. And like it's exuberant for me. Like I was very fortunate this week to show it to my students, and my students got a kick out of it. They liked it a lot. So anyway, that's one way out of it. Now, what's nice about this is the more you watch this video, the more it messes with your YouTube algorithm. So I do recommend watching it between 20 and 20,000 times. And it'll start showing you other choreographed projects, things that appear, things that are older, things that are newer, things that you may not have known before, but now it appears. So now it is part of that experience. So anyway, that's one of the ways to survive our medieval times, aside from, going outside, getting off social media and touching the trees, which you should, but that's not mandatory, but you should. And so there's ways out of this that are not mid. You don't have to worry about it. But I think in closing here, while I close the stream, is we have to remember these technologies do have a dark side of surveillance, and they have a dark side of control. And anything you could do that shows a form of independence and creativity to that, or even what is it? What does that article say? Like texture, meaning, all of those things. You could add that to something that really changes the way that we interact with reality. And it helps us get away from the idea that these systems are determinist or essential. And I mean, like the AI systems or any of these technologies are essential. They don't have to be. That is a choice. That is a consumer choice that we have to make collectively. And we don't have to do that. We could just not. So to survive these medieval times, you know, celebrate the things that are cool, creative, and original. And of course, as my tag, you have to be curious and you have to persist. You have to persist means have grit, like work through it. Be proud of the struggle that it takes to get things done. And when it takes that much time, as Josh, who's been helping me, and Destiny, who's been helping me with these projects, like it is tough. It is tough to do things that require grit. You want to not do that, but we have to do that. It's important. So thanks for being here, and thanks on the replay. And I'll be back next week. And yes, I will be plugging the Discord next week, but I'll send it out via social soon. I'm going to start a Discord that we can communicate and share all these ideas, and we can share links that I can talk about and share with my students. Semester is about to end, so that means this office hours will be my main output. Follow me on Instagram at Jamie Cohen. Follow me on YouTube right here. Follow us, me and Destiny, on Network Issues on our multiple platforms, and my Substack, newmediahomework.substack.com. And also, just as a side plug, you could follow all the extant projects that are out there, like Team Human. You could follow Taylor Lorenz's work that I've mentioned. So thanks, everybody. Really appreciate it. Thanks for being here. Yeah, I know I'm still on Substack. I'll get off Substack soon enough. Thanks again for being here, and have a very great week. Thanks, everybody.